A mile doesn't feel very far. You could walk it in 20 minutes. 2 miles, still manageable. But distance feels different when you're the only person around. When your phone has no signal, when the sun starts getting lower, when every direction starts looking exactly the same. The woods don't have to be haunted to remind you how small you really are. Welcome back to Static Hour. I'm Bree. Have you ever gotten lost somewhere and couldn't call for help, whether it be in the woods or somewhere else? Tonight, that's kind of our theme. These stories tonight will all center around the terrifying realization that if something goes wrong, you're on your own. Let's get into our first story. This is from user Squiddy, I think, 01. The subreddit is True Scary Stories, and it was posted within the last 6 to 9 months ago. It's called Terrifying Night in the Woods. I keep trying to forget about this story, but it keeps coming back into my memory even after years. I'm really curious if anybody has experienced anything similar. I went to college in rural Appalachia. I had heard all the previous quote-unquote rules about being in the woods at night. And then in parentheses, they said, no whistling in the woods, don't be out after dark, ignore crying deep in the woods, etc. But on this particular night, I ignored the most important rule: to stay out of the woods from dusk until dawn. I was on a very rural stretch of the Blue Ridge Parkway to watch the sunset with my then girlfriend. We wound up getting comfortable, laying down in the back of my car to the point where we started dozing off. I want to say I woke up after about 45 minutes after the sun had gone down, and the woods were dead silent. I instantly felt that something was wrong. I had a very strange feeling that I was being watched. Knowing something was off, I gently tried to wake my girlfriend to leave, when all of a sudden I heard this gut-wrenching scream from the woods beside my car. And then they say again in parentheses, I know that mountain lions and foxes can scream, but this wasn't like that. It sounded like a full-grown man screaming bloody murder. I instantly got out of the car, slammed my trunk shut, and ran to the driver's door to drive away. As I was putting my key in the ignition, I heard an almost maniacal laughing and what sounded like footsteps bolting toward us. Oh, hate that. I slammed the gas pedal and got the heck out of there. Neither of us spoke the entire drive back to campus. I have avoided that stretch of the parkway ever since. I have no idea what on earth happened. There are no hiking trails, buildings, or campsites anywhere near where we were. Anyway, I just thought I would share. Please don't wander in the woods after dark. I don't know what could have happened if I didn't wake up. So that's the end of their story. It's a short one, but just a good spooky one to kind of kick things off. And there is another story within the comments that I'm going to read as well. And this person is user Nasnidigenat. No, I don't know. So sorry. I ruined that. But they said, this happened to me once. Wanted to watch a meteor shower on a cross-country road trip by myself. Pulled off the highway in California an hour outside Sacramento and found a field. Pulled up, got on the roof of my car with my headphones in and a blanket. Already I'm freaking out because I never ever wear 2 headphones. It just makes me feel like I lose all sense of what's around me. Nearest lights were about a mile away. Quiet, calm, lovely night. I saw some meteorites, Hail to the Thief playing in my ears. After about 20 minutes apiece, I heard a noise that cut through the music. It sounded like a loud, raspy, phlegmy cough, drawn out and gasping. Ugh. I perked up and pulled out an earbud to listen. Was it a dog, I thought, barking? I looked around at the empty field I was in. I could see in all directions because of the moonlight and the clear skies. Nothing was moving. No rustling of grass, no insects, just the wind gently moving. Then I heard it again, louder and closer, clear as anything. The sound went up at the end, and it sounded aggressive. I sat up, bolt right on the roof of my car, clutching my belongings. Still in denial, I thought. Dog? Then I heard dogs barking in the distance. Not a dog. My feet didn't even touch the ground. I snaked down the side of my car and into the open driver's side window. I started driving in full flight mode, shaking from adrenaline. All the windows of my car were open to let in the night air. As I was fleeing, I had a panicked thought that it had already gotten in the car. Ugh, that gave me chills. I almost crashed into a ditch, punching at the bags and blankets in my back seat to make sure I was alone. I've heard foxes screaming. I've heard owls grumbling. I've heard asthmatic dogs and mountain lions calling and humans with COPD clearing their throat. I have never heard a noise like that before or since. I call it the night cougher, and whatever it was, I'm glad I didn't meet it. Ugh, I just see it, okay? All these stories are just reiterating the fact that, I don't ever want to go into the woods, and I don't have any reason to. I don't belong there, and that's okay. Moving on to story number 2. This is from user Justa33556, and the subreddit is Missing411, which I have not read from this subreddit yet, so we'll see how it goes. This is from 9 years ago. The title is Personal Experience. I believe I was almost snatched. I have a very strange experience 12 years ago in Starved Rock State Park, Illinois. It was so bizarre at the time that I never discussed it. I began reading the Missing411 stories a few weeks ago and realized what I encountered fits into the Missing411 profile. Additionally, since many of the Missing411 stories border on the unexplainable and bizarre, I feel what I encountered was not unique, that it was part of an actual phenomenon. And here is my story. I was visiting my girlfriend in Chicago. On a sunny and calm winter day, we decided to go for a hike at Starved Rock State Park, Illinois. I am an avid hiker, and being on leave from Iraq, I wanted to take in some cool, fresh air. We hiked the park for several hours. In the late afternoon, we started heading back to the car. About a half a mile away from the parking lot, we came into an area where the tree branches were broken and pulled over the trail. Most of the branches were broken high up, I'd say about 8 feet and more off the ground. I'd lived in Washington before going to Iraq and knew something of Sasquatch areas. So I told my girlfriend it looked like a Sasquatch area due to the branches being broken off so high and then pulled out over the trail. That's about the time things started to get really strange. Soon after mentioning this, I felt like someone was staring at me. It's like if you go into a room with a lot of people and someone is focused on you, and you get that uneasy feeling, and you can just tell you're being watched. It was like this, but stronger. I started to look around to see who was watching me. It was winter, and the forest was visible hundreds of feet in all directions. There was a group of walkers several hundred feet behind us, and no one in front of us, but I saw no one staring at me. As we passed through the Squatch area, I began to have the feeling that someone was behind me, following us. I looked around and listened, but saw and heard nothing. There were just the people 400 feet or so back on the trail, and they were talking amongst themselves. They weren't looking our way. The sense of someone being behind me was so persistent that I kept looking behind me, and I'd say at least twice a minute. The feeling of being watched is one thing, but feeling like someone is close behind you is something else. Okay, sorry. My back, like the skin just kind of tingling on the back of your neck. Mine is doing that, just like reading this. Because I That's just not a sensation you should ever feel, especially when you're hiking in the woods. But that's just me. I told the girlfriend to go further in front of me and let her go about 20 feet in front because I had a strong sensation of a nearby presence just behind us. So I turn around not more than 30 seconds since the last time I looked back. Oh, and there is this woman there. Okay. She was walking, but coming up on me fast. There was something way off about her speed. She was walking when I spotted her, but her speed was much faster than her gait. It was as if she was on a people mover escalator like in the airports. She was coming up fast and was, I'd say, no more than 15 or 20 feet behind me when I saw her. Oh, that's so scary. I was rather alarmed and glared at her. She stopped when our eyes met. I gave her a look like, WTF, are you doing coming up to me like that? We stood there staring at each other. Neither of us moved. She had her head cocked back to her left and looked at me from the corner of her eye, slightly alarmed, in a you caught me kind of look. She was completely normal looking, like a local Chicago lady, late 50s, wearing a bright red winter coat with gloves, slacks, etc. You know, I feel like that's an odd thing to wear when you're hiking, but okay. In hindsight, there are a few other things besides her speed which stands out. The slacks are standing out to me, honestly. The first thing is that there was no sound, no footsteps, no rustling in the woods, nothing to tell me to turn around other than the strong sense of something behind me, which I'd had for a bit. At the speed she was moving, she would have had to have been running hard, but I heard no footsteps. She was not breathing hard and her mouth was closed. Her gait was a walking gait. She was not running. However, she was moving toward me at a running speed. I mean fast. When she stopped, I'd say she was less than 20 feet from me. At the speed she was moving in 1 or 2 seconds, she would have been on me. I'm so confused. Like, what would have happened if he didn't turn around, you know? The next thing that stands out is her features. She had no distinguishing features, none in her hair, skin, or clothing. No shadowing or skin hues, dimples, etc. As a former Army criminal investigator, I know to look for distinctive markings on people in clothing. There were none. I'd estimate her height is about 5'10". Her clothes were of uniform coloring and indistinct. It was like she just stepped out of a department store. Her bright red coat was pristine, with a uniform hue to it. There wasn't even shading, which there should have been given the clear sky and low sun. So I guess he's saying like there's literally no like shadows or anything changing the color on her jacket, which, yeah, if you're outside at all, there's going to be some light differentiating, your clothing. So that's odd. And that's really cool that he, just given his background, he would notice something so minute, but also so messed up. After staring at each other for, I'd say, 5 or 10 seconds, I felt like I got my point across, so I turned around and continued walking. The girlfriend had not noticed anything, and she had continued to walk. I took about 3 steps and realized there was no way she could have come up from that group in the 30 or so seconds since I'd last looked back. There was also nowhere for her to come from on either side. Visibility at that point was hundreds of feet all around. I said to myself, no way, and spun back around. She was gone. Simply vanished. I checked the group behind us, and no one had a red coat on or was even looking at us. There was no one else around there, and there had been no sounds other than my footfalls. The woman just vanished. From that point, it took us about 10 minutes to reach the car. For the remainder of the walk, I did not feel like I was being stared at or followed. I have never been back to Starved Rock State Park and have no intention of going back. The whole thing was bizarre. How was I supposed to tell anyone about that? So I never have. My mental state was fine. I have a high IQ and a 20-year career in a STEM field following Army service. At the time, I was working a DOT IT contract in Iraq. I was well rested and relaxed being on vacation with a girlfriend. There were no drugs or alcohol involved. These are strictly prohibited in my line of work and were grounds for immediate termination. I've carried this experience around for 12 plus years, being unable to talk about it because it was so weird and unexplainable. It's a relief to read similar stories of unusual encounters and disappearances. After reading many missing 411 accounts in the profile of disappearances, I believe I narrowly averted being snatched by whatever that thing was. I do not think it was the woman I saw. I think it was something different that I couldn't really see. I'm so fascinated by this one because, first of all, I cannot believe that he never talked about it with his girlfriend, because I'm so curious to know if she also felt the weird feeling and she was like, okay, good, he's going to walk behind me and I won't be weird. So that's just crazy. But I don't know. I am so thankful that nothing did happen. I'm so curious as to what was about to happen, but that's why we like these kinds of stories, because we never know where it was going to go. So there was one comment. It asks, were there any smells associated with the woman? Could you distinguish background forest smells before and after? What was the noise factor at the time? Any machine or low hum, buzz, or clicks? Was the ambient noise the same before and after the event? Did the forest noise dim or soften around you? Was your vision distorted in any way before or after the event? Was your face, arms, hands, or any exposed body areas sore or itchy? Were your eyes sore or red? Any unusual marks or bruises? Were you thirsty or hungry after the event? Do you recall being dehydrated or nauseous? Did you sweat more or less? Were you sore? Unusual body smells. Did the time appear to slow down or stop during the event? At any time since, did you recall a message, like a thought, when you see the woman's face or think of an event, a dream with a symbol or a gesture? If you close your eyes and had to ask yourself if the event was hostile or friendly, which would you choose? Apologies for the questions. Your story is very interesting, and I have only one other scenario that comes close, though it's not a match by any means. And then the OP responded and said, I appreciate being able to discuss something which has always stuck with me as completely unexplainable. It's good to get it out there, so I'll provide your answers. All or no, except there was no noise because it was a calm winter day. No animals, no birds, just still. But I think that was normal for the weather conditions. What there should have been was the sound of her footsteps, but there were not. About half a mile before the Squatch area, things seemed to change, like an uneasiness. That's when I think I first perked up to my surroundings and started looking around more. The feeling of being stared at, then being followed, didn't start until after I told the girlfriend about looking like a Sasquatch area when passing through it. Number 2, the event did not seem either hostile or friendly. It seemed neutral. The only emotion that was my own was anger and being highly perturbed at someone coming up close behind me without warning after feeling like I was being stared at and followed for a ways. To me, it was an unwanted, unsolicited intrusion, a threat by definition, but not any feeling of it though. And then number 3, regarding awareness. There were times in Iraq, before and since, but mostly in Iraq, where I felt strongly something was about to happen. It is an ominous, impending, dreadful feeling, gut-sinking. Sometimes there is a direction or area to it, but most of the times not. On some occasions, I was able to act on it, whether alerting others or just moving, such as moving closer to or turning my shoulder to a T-wall, which is a blast barrier, just before a rocket hit the other side of it. You want to be under a projectile's arc, so you move closer to higher objects toward the direction of incoming. At least once, before a close rocket strike, my ears rang loudly and I was very anxious, wanting to move to another location, but we couldn't because we were waiting for another truck to join us at the convoy back to base. We were saved by a concrete wall between our truck and the rocket. There were times, however, when there was no warning before an event, usually when I was busy. It's like going into a room where there's a person who wants to rip your guts out. Believe me, you'll sense it. But I experienced none of this during the Starved Rock incident, only of being stared at and being followed from behind. I think I just got lucky or sensed her presence to turn around when I did. There was no sense of danger, just the sense of a presence behind me, which had been there for a bit. So I just thought that was just a really good story, but also I liked being able to kind of dig into the comments of that one and just get, more references for his state of being at the time and everything. But the woods, man, I don't know. And I'm so curious because he was able to see the hikers behind him. So I almost wish that I'm sorry, but when you're hiking and you see people in front of you, you're going to be paying attention to what they're doing, regardless of if you're staring at them the whole time. So my thought is, I wonder if they saw this interaction or they didn't see anything. And if they didn't see anything, is it because they weren't paying attention at the time or because no one else could see it but him? I don't know. On to our next story. This one is from user Mark C. Cheese under the subreddit True Scary Stories. And this one was from 6 years ago. The post is called Beautiful Lady. Back around when I was 5 or 6, I remembered this really beautiful lady in our neighborhood. She lived right next door to us, and she'd always come by to visit. I always thought she was great and a nice person, so I never understood why my grandmother hated her with a passion, or why my mom and dad would argue in hushed whispers after she left, or why I'd sometimes hear the gossips between the older people when they came over. It was a relatively small and rural neighborhood. Everyone knew each other, and we were a close-knit community. One day, my grandmother and a bunch of her old lady friends were chatting in the sala, which is Filipino word for porch. They were all sitting down, playing cards, and talking. That's when Miss A, I think that was her name, started with an A, came by and asked me if my dad was there and if she could go inside. My dad was the only technician in the neighborhood, so I thought she just needed help with something in her house. She avoided my grandmother and her friends' piercing glares as she entered their home. When she left with my dad to her house, my grandmother and her friends' whispers started. I felt so curious back then that I went up to my grandmother and asked, "Lola, what is so bad about Miss A?" And she set me on her lap and said, "Miss A is a bad woman. She's an old witch in disguise of a beautiful woman. And she is trying to lure the men in our neighborhood to be her spirit helpers by living in our midst." What? This just went to a wild place that I did not expect. "Your Uncle Egan disappeared because of her, and now she's after your dad. So you must never let her get too close. Understood, Maria?" I nodded my head, though I didn't quite understand at the time. She didn't look like a witch to me. To me, Miss A was just a very kind and very beautiful lady. I'm curious as to know why we're just letting her dad leave with this lady if they all believe she's a witch. But okay. My grandmother was a little bit of a, and I cannot even begin to pronounce it. It's like Mangkuklum, maybe, herself, which means mountain witch. Every morning at breakfast, she'd touch my dad's forehead, here we go, and whisper strange words I couldn't hear. I didn't think much of it at the time, but now that I do, was it some kind of protection spell? I'll never know. My grandmother has already passed away, so I couldn't exactly ask her. One day, I was playing hide and seek with the other neighborhood kids and hid behind the big tree in Miss A's yard. I saw her through the window. She was still very pretty, but there were deep wrinkles and bags I'd never noticed on her before. She saw me through the window and waved at me with a smile. I waved back, and then she shut the blinds on the window tight. When I told my grandma, Mama, and Papa about this during dinner that night, they all looked worriedly at each other. I never saw Miss A again after that, as the house next to us was vacated. There weren't even any moving vans. We moved to a bigger city when I reached 7th grade. These events had totally slipped my mind until a few days ago. A few days ago, I visited the old neighborhood we lived in and went to the birthday party of my friends who were twins. I'd kept in touch with them, and they had lived right across our old house. At the party, I saw a beautiful lady that looked remarkably like Miss A. Apparently, her name was Felicity, and she was Miss A's granddaughter. I never knew she had a husband, or a child for that matter. And she lived exactly where Miss A lived back in those days. She looked exactly like her. Black, curly hair, tall nose, tan, smooth skin, and red lips with alluring eyes. It was unsettling. I went back home and decided to forget about it. Just today, I received a chat from Jana, which is one of the twins, that Hannah's husband had went missing. No one knew why or where he went. He just went missing. I just can't help but feel it had something to do with what occurred all those many years ago. Oh, that story is a good one. That's a wild one. And so interesting. Okay, so apparently I need to look into Filipino ghost stories because there are a lot of them, because I love to hear, like we're doing with our state series. I love just to hear the different kind of legends or stories that come from different places. So maybe I will have an upcoming episode on the Filipino ghosts or anything like that. But this one it's such a good one, and it's very unsettling. And I wonder, like, I don't know. It can go so many directions that, like, did she really leave? I personally don't think she had a granddaughter, but maybe she did. I think that she just kind of keeps coming back throughout the next generations and kind of makes up this little timeline so it's not weird. But yeah, I think it's still her. And does she like steal a husband whenever she like starts to feel old? I remember reading stories like that as a kid where like they would have to like, I don't want to say eat, but like consume the younger people so they stayed young, kind of thing. Kind of like Tangled with when she brushed her hair. Sorry, I got on a little tangent there. Our next story, this one is from the user Lunch Frosty 1879 from the True Scary Story subreddit, and it's called Eerie Fishing Trip with a Friend. This is one that was posted not too long ago. I don't post often, and I don't tell stories very good either, but this just happened to me and my buddy a few hours ago, and it was pretty freaky. And they said, sorry if it's super long. So I, 17 male, am an outdoorsman, and I love to fish and hunt. So does my friend. We're the same age and we love the same stuff, so we decided to go fishing together today at a river. Now, we went fishing here last week, but we only caught one fish, so we decided to go back today and try our luck. It was raining off and on, and we weren't catching anything. So my buddy told me he had another spot. He said that across the road, we were under like a little bridge. There was a secret spot he used to go to. Me being bored and wanting to catch a fish, I agreed. At this point, it was constant rain, and we were soaked. But we walked across the road and into the woods anyway. Such a boy thing to do. Like, raining, it's fine. Now, for some reason, I started to feel weird. I can feel my heart beating, and I started to feel scared. At the time, I blamed it on the setting. Dark lighting and rain and a dense forest. When we got to the spot, it was a bend in the river, and it was an open sandbar on lower ground. So when we were standing there, we were in the wide open. We took a few casts, and we didn't get anything, and I started getting tired. So I helped my friend get his hook unstuck, and I said, all right, man, just 2 more casts, and then I'm out of here. He agreed, saying that he wasn't going to stay by himself if he wasn't with someone. I smiled and I cast my line when all of a sudden I just got a strange feeling. I get a shiver down my spine and the hairs in the back of my neck stood up. I immediately reeled in my line and said, "Nope, sorry man, I'm out of here. I just got like a bad feeling right now." Smart kid. Smart kid. I was looking around frantically because I felt like we were being watched. And at first, my friend didn't feel it, but then he said, "Yeah, something doesn't feel right." I said that we need to get out of there, and we started to pack up rapidly but calm. Now, at this point, it was really starting to rain and thunder, so that added more to the eerie feeling. But when my friend was putting on his boots, I got another surge of dread, and I just started to freak out. Never in my life have I felt like this. My heart was racing, and I was breathing super fast. We decided we would walk side by side, and we wouldn't run if anything happened in case it was a predator like a bear. As we picked up our tackle boxes and walked up the bank, my friend had his flashlight out. We heard almost like a wailing sound. Ugh. I can't quite describe it. It was faint, but it sounded close at the same time. My friend and I both froze, and we started whispering, "What was that? Did you hear that too?" So I told my friend to quickly turn off his flashlight, and we started to walk together. As we were walking through the dark, dense, and raining forest, I got that feeling again, and I started to panic. I was looking behind us and everything. When we were about halfway to the road, which wasn't visible from our spot, we heard something in the bushes, and my friend and I stopped on a dime, and I have never been more still in my life. But then, what we think was a deer ran across the path in front of us. I say we think because it didn't have a white tail, and it really wasn't as big as a deer. And it didn't move like one either. Super scared, my friend and I kept walking to our vehicles. My friend saw for sure a raccoon run across too. As we got to the tree line by the road, I stopped because I was honestly terrified and was short of breath. And my buddy said, "Man, I don't feel safe standing right here." Now, my friend isn't really the type to say that. He's kind of the type to be like, "Oh, man, aren't scared. I've got to be tough" kind of guy. So when he said that, he meant it. And that's when I didn't feel safe at all either. We walked to our vehicles and we stood in the headlights trying to pack up everything. And even on the other side of the road, I still felt terrified. We stayed in the car on the phone until we each got home, just talking about how weird that felt. We've been in the forest our whole lives, and we've never felt like we were ever in danger before. Everything just felt different, and that quote-unquote deer didn't feel right either. I don't know what else to say except I am triple checking that I locked my doors tonight. If you have any ideas or thoughts, please let me know. This is honestly the most scared I've ever been, and I want to know what you guys think. Okay. He kind of said it. Like, I was going to say, if you're someone who hunts and fishes and things, number one, you've probably heard a lot of wildlife during that time. I feel like your body's probably reacted to wildlife around you. And so it sounds to me like this is something that is totally separate than like he heard a wild boar or something. And I don't really know what I would not like say necessarily anything about the deer just because it was raining and it was probably, it could have just been a regular deer. But I still think that the wailing is not a normal sound. Definitely spooky. And I think for two, 17-year-old boys, that is a hard thing to admit when you are truly terrified. And the fact that they both started feeling it just kind of goes to show there's probably something not great there. I tried to look in the comments to see if anyone kind of had any, thoughts or anything about it. Since it is so new, there really aren't very many comments. One person said maybe a mountain lion, depending on where you live. And then the OP said, "I'm in kind of central Minnesota, so a mountain lion technically isn't impossible, but I doubt that it was." And I know where I live, we do have mountain lions. They're not everywhere, but you've seen them. And I know that they make lots of crazy noises, but I personally haven't ever heard of them making like a wailing sound. It's more of like a scream from what I know, but who knows? And either way, like the feeling of being like hunted or stalked by something is so scary. So glad that these two were safe, and hopefully they just like do not ever go near that area again. And also, one thing that I didn't think of until just now was I know, again, I don't know anything about Minnesota really, but I know in some woods, if you remember like episode 1 or 2, maybe, um, people would do like moonshine and they would do things to like scare people away. So maybe it was something like that, or maybe people were, had like a drug operation back there and it was just like they were getting too close to their spot. And so they were trying to get them out of the area. That would not surprise me at all. Either way, no matter what the cause was, all of them are terrifying answers. There's no scenario that I can think of and it be comforting to me. But that's just me, I guess. All right. This is our last story, and it's from the user Cody's Keeper from the Backwoods Creepy subreddit, and it's from 8 years ago. Post is called Weird Experience in the Smoky Mountains. Okay, to start off, me and my husband were sitting out on the deck at night, and all of a sudden, an extremely loud, high-pitched scream came from right in front of us. We ran inside. This scream lasted a good 15 seconds and did not sound like any of the animal screams that I've looked up. Our friends come running up from the basement asking what the heck that was. After about 10 minutes, it sounds off again and everyone runs back inside. This is where it gets more weird. My husband went out the front to walk down the driveway and investigate. My daughter grabs me and says, "Mommy, why is Daddy doing that?" My husband is at the front door, chin down, eyes staring at me, scratching the door. Holy moly. I roll my eyes and keep looking out the back, thinking he's just messing with us. Eventually, he comes back inside, and my daughter asks why he did that. And he said, "What are you talking about? I was at the bottom of the driveway." I have tried to break this man into telling me that it was a prank for a few days, and he still says it wasn't him. Even through my daughter having a panic attack for hours, he swears it wasn't him. The next night, I'm standing on the deck and rocks start to be thrown from the roof past my head and hitting the ground. The screams start again. After telling all of our friends what's happening, I see someone outside and hiding. I'm assuming to throw rocks and scare me more. Well, my daughter goes out and looks under the truck, and the friend is just laying under the truck, not responding to anyone, no matter what. The screams are coming from right next to him, and he's not moving. What? We all come inside and leave him. Huh? Eventually, we find him next to the cabin, and he laughs when he's caught. Well, we all go in again, and the same friend comes up from the basement, wet, slips, and falls. I said, "That's what you get for pulling that stuff outside." He says, "What are you talking about?" He said he's been downstairs in the jacuzzi the whole time. None of the 9 other people saw him come inside the house when we did, even though we all came in at the same time. Trust me, I want to believe that this is just a prank, and I know everyone reading this will say it's a prank, but my husband and friend are adamant that it wasn't them. And also, we're being personally victimized by the same bear at every point in the day, so that's fun. What? Oh, they have this crazy experience, and then the end. Oh, also, we're dealing with the bear, so that's great. So, looking in the comments, there's a lot of people being like, "Well, that's the mountains for you," that kind of thing. Someone said a mimic, which I know is like a legend kind of thing. Oh, okay. So I thought this was their house. This is a VRBO that they're staying in. So, I don't know. Someone said you really need to Google the address and see if any other stories pop up from renters. Ugh. And then they said, read the reviews and please update us. They never did. Someone says, we live on Lookout Mountain on the Georgia-Alabama line. Very, very secluded. Weird stuff like this is so normal here. Like my entire life, I've lived 50 plus years. It's just kind of normal. Scary, but normal. Like what? Why are these people living in places like this? That blows my mind. The person said, my daughters are 10 and 11. Someone asked how old they were. Someone said, that description of your husband is bone-chilling. I agree. That was like the scariest part for me. Because the way that she wrote all of this, like, she's talking about the weird stuff, and then she throws in these other insane things that just take you off guard. Ugh. Okay, so someone said, okay, but was your friend the one screaming? Like, was his mouth moving, or were the screams just sort of echoing out of, I don't know where, next to him? I'm asking genuinely. And also, was he wet or wearing a bathing suit when he was under the car? And the OP said, no, the screams absolutely weren't coming from him. The screams were moving location and back in the woods. He was in a bathing suit under the truck, but not wet like when he came up from the basement. Ugh. And the other commenter said, ew, that's even worse. Almost like it had them in a trance and using him for bait or whatever. Someone asked, drinking, drugs, blah, blah, blah. OP said, no drinking or drugs. They would be the joking type of friends to do these kind of things, but they are a dead set that it was not a joke. And then they said, the bear has been trying to break into our trucks every day. Sat on the porch for 5 hours yesterday. Holy moly. And last night we were bringing groceries, and within seconds he was there and almost opened the truck door before we could lock it and got into the bed of our truck, and we scared it off. He came back at some point and did some light damage to the truck last night. We have 4 more nights, so I'm scared. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry, what? Wow, wow, wow. This is crazy. And then someone gave a link to a lot of other creepy Appalachia stories. So, which I have read a lot of stories from there, and I'm sure I will continue to read stories from there because, man, those woods, the mountains, the whole scene is just terrifying. That's where we're ending it tonight. Properly spooked by that last one, for sure. Thank you so much for spending another night with me. The woods have a way of reminding us just how small we really are. Tonight's stories weren't terrifying necessarily because of what people saw. They're terrifying because they don't know what could have happened. They were so close to something that could have been so much worse. If you enjoyed tonight's broadcast, we would really appreciate you following along, leaving a review, sharing it with your friends. And if you're craving even more stories, please head over to our Patreon where you can get bonus episodes. And as always, if you have a story that you would like us to hear and share on the podcast, please send it in. You can email us at statichourpodcast@gmail.com or send it into any of our social medias, comments, or anything. We'll get it. I'm Bree, and you have been listening to The Static Hour. We are going off the air. Good night.